last episode, we identified the four roots, and that gave us the space to realize that there's a gap. There's a gap between your readiness and your capability. One thing is to be able to name it, and the other thing is to know what to do with it and what is the next step. The point is that I don't want to leave you simply sitting in the wounds, simply sitting in the roots, simply with the language to say, okay, I can name this thing and now what? So the goal for today is to leave with something for your body, something for your week, and something for you to ponder on, like a reflection question. Because I believe as we give ourselves permission to reflect and to inquire and be curious and integrate through thought, after we work with the body, of course, this is how things actually change.
Sabrosura pa' ti que qué.
Hola, hola, welcome back to Café con Pam, the bilingual podcast that celebrates the power of our stories, the medicine in our voices, and the magic of reclaiming who we are. Este episodio somos nada más tú y yo. And last episode, the last solo episode that you and I had together, we talked about the four roots: translating, managing without authority, caring, and surviving visibility. Something that I heard from a couple of you was, all right, we have a name for it. ¿Y ahora qué, no? ¿Qué sigue? Because one thing is to be able to name it, and the other thing is to know what to do with it and what is the next step. Because once you name it, it's almost like how many times when women especially get diagnosed with ADHD, the next step is like, and now what? And actually, I recently had this conversation with a group of people I know about it because you don't get resources. You know, it's like, oh, you can name the thing that's been hard for you, pero now you go still in the world and deal with it, no? So I don't want to do that. Last episode, we identified the four roots, and that gave us the space to realize that there's a gap. There's a gap between your readiness and your capability, no? So between your readiness to jump into that confidence and your capability, your certainty of the confidence, then there's the in between gap. And it shows up as two sisters. These are nameable things as well that are connected with the space between where you are and where you want to go. So the first one is called the visibility wound. We're familiar with that. We've heard about it. There's many people talking about it. But one thing that I think it's missing is the certainty gap. And they're sisters. So the visibility wound typically comes with a certainty gap, back, gap. They're not the same thing, but they are like the cousins that love each other, always hang out together. And so what we're going to talk about today is both of those things with research, because, you know, I always like to back it up with research. I don't know why, actually, but I'm that person. Maybe my own imposter phenomenon shows up here. But the point is that I don't want to leave you simply sitting in the wounds, simply sitting in the roots, simply with the language to say, okay, I can name this thing and now what? So the goal for today is to leave with something for your body, something for your week, and something for you to ponder on, like a reflection question. Because I believe as we give ourselves permission to reflect and to inquire and be curious and integrate through thought, after we work with the body, of course, this is how things actually change. So, if you are someone who's ever had your thought fully formed in a meeting, in a conversation, at the workplace, I don't know, trying to buy a car, whatever it is, and you knew what you thought was relevant, you knew it would add something to the conversation, and still paused and didn't say it, este episodio es para ti. Let's get into it. So, the gap between knowing you have the roots and still feeling the pull to make yourself smaller is exactly the point of today's episode. So, there are the two specific nameable things, the visibility wound and the certainty gap. I've already told you they are not the same, but we can work with them instead of pushing them under the rug. Okay? We're not going to dive deep into the pain because we don't want to stay in the wound. We're simply going to name the wound, we're going to understand it, and we're going to move through it so we can leave with something and we can stand in our truth and our power and in our certainty. I want to share with you something that actually happened when I realized I had my own certainty gap. And this is when I was in the corporate world and I was in a hiring committee. And we had interviewed several candidates for a specific position. It was an operations position. It was a little tricky because they needed to have various skills. And finally, we got a candidate who was like almost there, but the vibes were not there. And so on paper, this candidate fit perfectly. But there was something within me when I got to ask my questions and the way that kind of like the attitude that I got and, you know, women specifically, women of color specifically, we learn to scan rooms and have also ADHD, my neurodiversity allows me to notice micro expressions. And I knew he wasn't it, but he had been the closest one to what we had been looking for. And so everyone in the committee was like, I think, you know what? This is the person. I think we just need to go with him because what he offers is good. And like whatever we see that might be missing, I think it can be filled with training. And, sometimes my face comes with subtitles. And one of the people there said, Pam, what do you think? And for a millisecond, because, we have our own internal algorithm that makes the calculation of, am I going to say, how is this going to be taken? I mean, there's reasons I'll talk about it in a second, but during that split second of somebody opening the door for me and saying, what do you think? For a moment, I thought, I'm just going to say yes because everyone is saying that he's great. So even though I don't think he's great, because there's something there that I can't explain, should I say it? I don't know. And so for a millisecond, I went through all of that process and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. So I said, you know what? I don't think he is the right person for the role, even though he may have all, like most of the qualifications we've had a candidate come through before. Even though, like, all of the things on paper, he interviewed well, but there's still something that I don't think he's going to be a good cultural fit for the business. And the whole committee was like, okay, he can adapt to the company culture. And, various like rebuttals that I received. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I was asked what I thought, and I still don't think he is the right candidate. So if we want to end up like this is a democracy. So if I'm outvoted, so be it. I still got to express what I thought. He got hired and he wasn't it. Soon after he came on board, we started getting complaints from the team. They were like the culture, he did not fit the company culture. And he also came from a much larger business, which meant that he had also different expectations and how teams worked, et cetera, et cetera. And so back to the hiring process. And the next candidate that we got this time, they were like, Pam, what do you think? And this time around, I was much more certain because I had already built the evidence in my body that my answer was correct. And so that calculation, my internal algorithm that says, ask the following questions. Is it safe and what is it going to cost me to say and express what I want to say? At that point, the safety piece was more calm. It wasn't as activated, like, I don't know if it's safe because I had already built that other piece of evidence from the prior candidate that said what you thought was correct. And how much is it going to cost me is a question that we often run through. It's part of our algorithmic amygdala processing because the body wants to know, is this something that is going to affect my reputation? Is this something that is going to affect my relationships? The cost is something that's quite deep because it takes us so much longer many times to have a space, to have a chair in the room. to have a seat at the table. And so this algorithmic calculation that our amygdala does, I don't want to call it imposter phenomenon or syndrome because I don't think it is. And I don't even think it's lack of confidence. It's a simple math equation. If we look at it like that, es una ecuación matemática que simplemente calcula basándonos in the numbers. So, through evidence, that calculation changes and shifts depending on the real life experience. The challenge is not that I was not ready to express myself or that I wasn't confident. The challenge is that my body was running a survival calculation in a moment that called for leadership. And I didn't have language for the difference. And so the goal of today is to give ourselves the language so we can begin moving through it. Hay conversaciones que nos enseñaron a callar, y dinero was one of them. Pero here's the truth. Tu dignidad financiera no debería depender de que traduzcas todo para tu mamá, tus tías, tu abuelita o quien sea. Savvy Ladies just made it easier than ever to get financial help en español. Their free helpline means your mama can ask a question without you having to translate shame, confusion, or whatever her comadre told her. Talleres, clases, consejos, todo completamente gratis y con el respeto que nuestras familias merecen. Porque libertad financiera no es lujo, es necesidad. So whether it's you or your mama who's ready to take that first step, go to savvyladies.org. That is SAVVYLADIES.org. Empieza hoy. La dignidad financiera no se pide, se reclama. You know what's frustrating? Losing your wallet. And you know sometimes what's even more painful? Realizing your almost full punch card from your favorite cafecito spot is now gone. But at least, even when your cafecito points have vanished, at BMO, if you lose your debit card, they'll print you a new one instantly at a local branch. Plus, you can use your phone to freeze your debit card to prevent any unauthorized transactions. Learn more at bmo.com. Conditions apply. Accounts provided in the United States by BMO Bank and a member FDIC. The visibility wound is your nervous system's learned association between being seen and being in danger. This is not a belief that you choose. This is a pattern your body has learned. Your body has learned it from real evidence, from real experience, from being in rooms that scrutinized you more, from being in rooms that rewarded you less, from being in rooms that expected more of you. Many times, yes, we will say because we give more. Sometimes for being in rooms where you were punished for the same behaviors that got your counterparts promoted. There's a Tulshyan and Burey piece called Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome. And their argument is precisely this. What women of color experience in professional spaces is not internal self doubt. It is a rational, accurate response to a real external environment. The extra scrutiny is real, and your nervous system simply read the room correctly. Your nervous system knows what the room expects of you. And of course, I'm going to talk about presumed incompetent, the research that backs it up that women of color in professional spaces are documented and measurable presumed incompetent by default. And I'm going to have the sources of this in the show notes. We are required to prove competence in ways that other people are not. And it's not us victimizing. It's not us saying, ay, qué pobrecitas de nosotras that we are. Like, no, it's simply that our bodies have learned that visibility in rooms comes with a cost. Es muy fácil, ¿no? And so when our bodies learn something, we create a protection response. Your visibility wound actually exists in your body. It is the chest that tightens before you hit send. It's the voice that drops half a register when you walk into a room, that has perhaps more power. It's the pause before you introduce yourself that's just a beat longer. And these are not personality quirks. This is your wound saying, hey, be careful. Because the cost behind what you're about to do, say, express, etc., might be a lot. And of course, this is not something for us to be ashamed of at all. This is not at all weakness. This is quite brilliant, in fact. This is your nervous system creating like really cool processes to keep you safe. Así de fácil. And the work is not to shame what it is, the work is to give new evidence, just like in my story. When I said, this is not it, the first time and it was shut down, I still like it hurt a little, but I was like, you know what? I felt I did what my body called for. And then when the evidence came back and they were like, you were right, tell us what you think now. Then my body had more evidence that closed the certainty gap that was like, you got it. So, speaking of the certainty gap is different because it's the space between what you know intellectually and what your body believes is true. And this is the work that I do. Because cognitively, factually, you know you belong in the room. You've earned it. You are qualified. You cognitive like perhaps you can even say it. Many times I talk to women, they're like, I know I deserve a seat in the room, but the moment I'm there, it's like, oh, well, because the certainty gap lives in the body. Your brain might say you belong here, and your body might question, what if they find out? What are they going to find out? Everyone has different stories within that question. Confidence is what you perform. Certainty is what you inhabit. You can perform confidence. And most of us, frankly, are good at it. We've been taught to fake it till we make it for years, no? Like we hear this all the time. Fake it till we make it. Maybe, frankly, I may have even said it years ago because it's the thing that we are taught to do. Pero lo que sucede es que as we perform confidence, it becomes exhausting because what performance requires constant maintenance. Certainty, in the contrary, it's settled in the body. It's standing on ground you know will hold you. So the gap comes from calladita culture because calladita culture took your certainty first. Calladita culture actually took certainty and then it took your voice. Before it taught you to shrink, it started making you question whether you were the right kind of person. Not American enough, not Latina enough, not professional enough, not traditional enough. It put you in this neither nor situation super early and quite consistently, in fact, that the inner story in the body was I'm always one step away from being found out. And I have an example of a quite successful, one of my favorite clients. I mean, I feel like sharing this story, I'm going to combine probably a couple of them because it's such a common thing. Of I have two clients actually, and not even the same, and quite vastly different industries, but they're both quite successful, multi-million dollar businesses, both CEOs, both like on it. So like badass. And the conversations we've had is precisely that. What if they find out? What if I'm going to walk into that room and they find out that I actually don't know what I'm doing? Even though, like, these people have 20 years of experience. So these are not someone who, just happen to build a business. These are people that have businesses that have been in business for like 2 decades. They have over 2 decades of experience. And these women are still walking in rooms thinking, more so feeling their bodies might still be feeling from time to time because they were working on it, that it's an accident or that they got lucky to be there and eventually somebody's going to find out. And that is what I call the certainty gap. And the thing is, she may have evidence of her competence. All of us do. But the certainty gap is not filled with evidence. It's filled with experience. Specifically, the experience of being seen and discovering that you survived it. That visibility didn't destroy you. The wholeness is safe. And this is where the visibility wound and the certainty gap feed each other. The visibility wound says, being seen is dangerous. The certainty gap says, I'm not sure I'm certain enough to survive it. So, this is where together, that's why I say they're sisters, they create the hesitation. They create the edited version of you. They create the thought that says, don't say it. The whisper that says, ooh, this thought could be really good if you share it. But then the whisper comes in and says, it's not quite safe yet. Is the moment you made yourself a little smaller than you needed to be. So, what I want you to walk away with today is we're not going to overanalyze the wound. We understand it's there. What we're going to do is three specific things, one for your week, one for you to ponder, like I said, and one for your body. Because the way out of the visibility wound and the certainty gap, obviously, we understand it, but is about giving your nervous system new experiences. We know those micro moments of shifting, micro moments of evidence, micro moments of I was seen and I survived it and it was okay. The somatic exercise, it's 90 seconds. Truly, it's what it takes. Before you walk into the room, before you hit send, before you do anything that your body's like, oh, don't do it. You want to exhale. It's very simple. You want to exhale all the air that you have. And then you want to inhale slowly and deeply. And then you're going to put your hand on your forehead. If you're just listening to the episode, think about the palm of your hand on your full forehead, holding you. The other hand on the back of your head, on the nape of your head, holding your head. So you're giving yourself a head hug, basically. And as you are taking your breath in, you're going to release as if you're blowing through a straw, very slowly. Very, very slowly. You're going to do that a couple of times. The power is in the exhale because what the exhale does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest. It tells your amygdala you're not in danger. And so we always want to start there. You want to plant your feet on the ground. And once you feel a little calmer, you want to bring yourself to the truth. This is not an affirmation, this is a fact. I've been preparing for this my whole life. Or you can simply say, I know what I'm talking about. Or you can say, I belong here. It needs to feel true to you. So, whatever feels the truest to you, I am here. Sometimes I say, you know what? I am here. Right here, right now. I am healthy, I am safe, and I'm okay. It takes 90 seconds. You just build a little bit of evidence in your body to say, it's not a tiger outside. That's it. So that's your somatic tool. Your micro action, because I'm going to give you three. So the challenge that I want to give you is do one thing that makes you visible. Of course, we're not going to get on stage or give a TED talk. One tiny thing that would make your visibility wound whisper, not today. Maybe it's a LinkedIn post. Maybe go through the drafts of all the things that you've been wanting to share, but you're like, oof, not today. And maybe you can do a little light editing. Maybe you don't feel quite the way that you felt when you drafted it first, but then post it. Maybe it's the meeting where you've been wanting to speak. Maybe you say the thing. We've done this exercise before. Maybe you talk for 10 seconds. Maybe you send the email. The size of the activity doesn't matter. What matters is that you're creating evidence, you're shifting the pattern. And every time you choose visibility and survive it, this is when your body says, oh, there was no catastrophe. So your nervous system receives new data. And then your algorithm changes. And then the next calculation, it's not going to be like, oh, so intense, because you already have built some evidence that says you might be all right. The last exercise I'm going to give you is the pondering question. This is your journaling moment, perhaps. When you have a quiet moment, ask yourself, where am I waiting for permission to be seen? And who did I decide had the authority to give it to me? Where am I waiting for permission to be seen? And who did I decide had the authority to give it to me? Give yourself the space to ponder, to journal, go on a walk, record yourself, because the permission you're waiting for to be fully visible, to take up the space your roots have earned, nobody's going to come to give it to you. This is not a manager thing. This is not an industry. This is not a room. This is not society. The permission was always yours. And the work of the season is learning to give it to yourself. En el siguiente episodio, we're going to dive deeper in something I called the ceiling. This is the specific experience of why it gets harder, not easier, the higher you go. Why your visibility wound tends to intensify right at the moment of expansion. And believe me, I know it firsthand. I know you know it. And we're also going to talk about what the research says about why that happens and what you can do about it. But between now and then, you have your 3 tools, your 90-second practice, your visibility move, and your pondering question. Because what we want to do is give our nervous system new evidence. Rooted authority is not something you think your way into. It's something you practice your way into. Okay? The permission is always yours, and it always was. And I know saying it and feeling it is a different thing, but the more we practice, the more evidence we build. So every time you choose visibility and survive it, you're building evidence. You're writing new code. You are rewriting your algorithm. So give it new evidence, tiny, tiny, tiny steps. You belong. You always have. You always did. Please share this episode with the woman in your life who's sitting on something she hasn't said yet. The one who has the thought fully formed and keeps swallowing it. You know her. Send her this episode and tell her this one's for you. Tag me in all the places and spaces. Tell me what your one visible move is this week, and I will be replying or watching. And if the Calladita Culture Leadership Cohort is still on your mind, head over to cafeconpam.com/leadership. And this is exactly the work we go deep on together: the visibility wound, the certainty gap, and what it takes to move from surviving visibility to actually choosing with others, with women who are doing the same thing beside you. Y bueno, como siempre, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Thank you for choosing to grow with me. Siempre, siempre. It's such an honor. Y nos vemos la próxima. Sigue brillando. Café con Pam is created con mucho amor by our small but mighty team. Content production by Nancy Jaimes. Podcast management by Maru Linardi. Social media and marketing by Brenda Figueroa. And me, your host, Pam Covarrubias. To keep the cafecito brewing and the healing flowing, join the Supporters Club for only $5 a month and access early episodes, behind-the-scenes vibes, and exclusive minisodes you won't hear anywhere else. Screenshot this episode and tag me and share what resonated. I love seeing your takeaways. Follow on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's keep the conversation going with us on social media at Café con Pan Podcast, because your voice always matters there. We love being on Instagram and Facebook. Gracias for listening to Café con Pan, a Spread Ideas Move People production. For more episodes, guest info, or resources, visit cafeconpam.com. And if you're healing from Calladita culture and don't know where to start, you can take the quiz. cafeconpam.com/quiz for tia wisdom and cariño just for you.
Sabrosura pa' ti que